In the intricate ecosystem of human society, a complex web of interactions shapes our daily lives. From the smallest transaction to the grandest of economic policies, every action has a ripple effect. Capitalism, with its dynamic forces and inherent contradictions, stands as the dominant organizational force. It's the framework within which much of the world operates, influencing everything from resource allocation to technological advancement. Like a living forest, it thrives on a web of interactions and dependencies where each element plays a crucial role in the overall health and stability of the system. Just as a forest needs sunlight, water, and fertile soil, capitalism requires investment, innovation, and a level playing field to flourish. It is constantly shaping our world through innovation and growth, driving progress in technology, medicine, and countless other fields. The pursuit of profit, while sometimes criticized, has also been a powerful engine for creativity and problem-solving. But what happens when its lifeblood, capital, runs dry for most people? What are the consequences when the fruits of economic progress are not shared equitably? This is not just theory, it's not an abstract academic debate confined to lecture halls and research papers. It's a question that strikes at the core of our civilization, impacting the lives of billions around the globe. It's about the future we're building, and whether that future will be one of shared prosperity or increasing division. The engine of capitalism has always relied on, and continues to depend on, the accumulation and investment of capital, the lifeblood that keeps the economic machine running smoothly. Without sufficient capital flowing through the system, growth stagnates, opportunities diminish, and inequality deepens. This fuels industries and defines billions of lives, shaping the destinies of individuals, families, and entire nations. It dictates access to education, healthcare, and even basic necessities. Today, the gap between rich and poor widens at an alarming rate, creating a chasm that threatens to destabilize society. As personal debt rises to unsustainable levels, and economic anxiety spreads like a contagion, it's a slow drought threatening the system's roots, weakening the foundations upon which our economic prosperity is built. We'll explore whether capitalism can survive when the majority have no capital, when a significant portion of the population is excluded from the benefits of economic growth, or if it will collapse under its own weight, burdened by inequality and unsustainable practices. Can the system adapt, or is it destined for a reckoning? Some argue it's doomed without broad participation, that a system that concentrates wealth in the hands of a few is inherently unstable and unsustainable. Others believe it can adapt and evolve, finding new ways to distribute wealth and opportunity more equitably. They point to the power of innovation and the resilience of the human spirit. The story of capitalism is ultimately a human story, a reflection of our values, our aspirations, and our collective choices. It's one of ambition, ingenuity, and the quest for survival, but also one of cooperation, compassion, and the pursuit of a better world for all. To truly understand the stakes involved in our economic system, to grasp the potential consequences of imbalance, we must first define capital, what it represents, how it functions, and why it's so crucial to the overall health of our society. It's the stored energy of our economic world, the fuel that powers growth and innovation. It's more than just money sitting idly in the bank. It's not simply about numbers on a screen or digits in an account. It's the collective resources that can be actively used to create more wealth, to generate opportunities, and to improve the overall standard of living for everyone. This includes savings, of course, but also property, the skills we possess, and the knowledge we accumulate throughout our lives. It's the sum total of our productive capacity. Financial capital encompasses savings, investments, stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments that allow us to allocate resources efficiently. Physical capital refers to tangible assets like property, infrastructure, and machinery, the tools we use to produce goods and services. And perhaps most importantly, human capital represents our skills, our education, and our health, the qualities that make us productive members of society. In a healthy economic system, capital flows freely, much like water in a river, constantly moving and nourishing the landscape. It's accumulated through savings and investment, then circulated throughout the economy, creating a virtuous cycle of growth and prosperity. This constant flow is what drives economic activity, fuels innovation, and ultimately leads to a higher quality of life for everyone. However, when most people lack access to capital, when they are excluded from participating in this flow, this vital flow slows to a mere trickle, hindering progress and creating stagnation. Instead of being widely distributed, capital becomes concentrated among a select few, creating a widening gap between the haves and have-nots. The majority of the population finds themselves living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet and with little opportunity to build wealth. They have no buffer to weather unexpected storms and no real stake in the overall growth of the economy. Without widespread access to capital, the system's overall energy begins to fade, leading to a decline in productivity and innovation. The economy becomes barren and unproductive for many, with limited opportunities for advancement or prosperity. Meanwhile, opportunity and wealth become increasingly concentrated at the top, creating a system that benefits a select few at the expense of the many. This isn't just a matter of financial loss, it's not simply about a decrease in overall wealth. It's a loss of resilience, a loss of hope, and a loss of faith in the system's ability to provide a better future for all. The fundamental question we must ask ourselves is this: can the system truly survive in the long term when its lifeblood, capital, is no longer flowing freely and equitably? Economists warn that capitalism without broad capital ownership is like an engine without fuel. Consumer spending drives the system, but if most people have no savings or credit, demand collapses. Businesses cut back, unemployment rises, and the cycle worsens. A downward spiral identified by Keynes as a core weakness. Capital isn't just for spending, it's for investing and innovation. Historically, the middle class's savings fueled new businesses and growth. If ordinary people can't save, the engine of innovation stalls. Ownership and opportunity concentrate at the top, breaking the promise that hard work leads to a better future. When hope and fairness vanish, unrest and instability follow. In this view, capitalism without capital doesn't just weaken, it risks consuming itself. The stakes are not just economic but social and political. History, with its vast archives and countless narratives, offers stark warnings. These aren't mere anecdotes or dusty relics of the past, they are critical lessons etched in the collective memory of humankind. These warnings speak volumes about what happens when capital, the lifeblood of any economy, disappears from the hands of the many, concentrating instead in the grasp of a select few. The Great Depression, a period of unprecedented economic hardship, saw banks fail at an alarming rate. Financial institutions, once pillars of stability, crumbled under the weight of panic and mismanagement. Savings, painstakingly accumulated over years, were wiped out in an instant, leaving families destitute and hopeless. The dreams of a secure future vanished like smoke, and mass unemployment soared to levels never before imagined, as factories shuttered their doors and businesses collapsed, casting a long shadow of despair across the nation. Capital evaporated, leaving behind a trail of devastation that stretched from Wall Street to Main Street, impacting every facet of American life. Consumer demand and investment collapsed, as fear gripped the hearts of individuals and businesses alike, creating a vicious cycle of economic decline. This economic turmoil triggered social and political upheaval, as people took to the streets to voice their anger and frustration, demanding change and accountability. Extremist movements rose, capitalizing on the widespread discontent and offering radical solutions that threatened the very foundations of democracy. And in the U.S., the New Deal, a bold and ambitious program of government intervention, injected capital and confidence back into the system, providing a lifeline to a nation on the brink. The lesson is stark and undeniable. Capitalism, left unchecked and unregulated, possesses the inherent capacity to self-destruct, leading to widespread suffering and societal breakdown. The 2008 financial crisis, a more recent but equally devastating event, echoed this pattern with chilling accuracy. Housing wealth, the cornerstone of many families' financial security, collapsed as the housing bubble burst, leaving millions facing foreclosure and homelessness. Credit froze as banks, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, stopped lending, crippling businesses and stifling economic activity. And the flow of capital, the lifeblood of the modern economy, ground to a halt, plunging the world into a deep recession. Government intervention, in the form of massive bailouts and stimulus packages, prevented total collapse, averting what could have been a catastrophic outcome. But the scars remain, etched deeply into the fabric of society: slow growth, wage stagnation for the working class, and a widening gap between the rich and the poor. Trust in institutions, once a bedrock of social order, eroded as people lost faith in the ability of governments and financial institutions to protect their interests. This disillusionment fueled populist movements both on the left and the right, as people sought radical alternatives to the status quo. These episodes, separated by time but united by a common thread, show that when capital is insecure, concentrated in too few hands and unevenly held, society is perpetually vulnerable to economic shocks, social unrest, and political instability. The foundations upon which we build our lives become fragile and uncertain. The system may survive these crises, limping back to a semblance of normalcy after the storm is past, but only after being pushed to the brink of collapse, teetering on the edge of a precipice from which there may be no return. The warning is clear, etched in the annals of history for all who are willing to see and heed its message. Widespread loss of capital, whether through mismanagement, inequality, or unchecked greed, threatens not just prosperity and economic growth, but the very stability of our societies and the foundations of our democratic institutions. The past is not just a collection of dates and events. It is a cautionary tale, a roadmap for navigating the complexities of the present and building a more secure and equitable future for all. Yet, some see capitalism as a living organism capable of adaptation and survival. Crises can spark creative destruction, sweeping away old models and making room for new ones. The definition of capital could evolve, valuing data, reputation, or social networks as new sources of wealth. Scarcity of capital might drive businesses to adopt labor-intensive or cooperative models, or rely on peer-to-peer networks. Political responses like the New Deal or post-2008 reforms are part of capitalism's self-correction, not its end. Future crises could spur policies like universal basic income or wealth taxes, redistributing capital and restarting the engine. In this view, capitalism's resilience lies in its ability to reinvent itself. If capitalism can't adapt, what might replace it? A shift toward socialism is one possibility: collective ownership of production, guided by central planning to meet everyone's needs. Proponents promise equity, critics warn of inefficiency and loss of innovation. More likely are hybrid systems like universal basic income, which provides everyone a baseline of capital to sustain demand and opportunity. Cooperative models, credit unions, employee-owned companies, community land trusts could flourish, prioritizing community over profit. These aren't a rejection of markets, but a reimagining of their purpose. The future may see a more distributed democratic capitalism. The landscape is changing, and new models are already taking root. The nature of work would transform if capital vanished for most. Secure long-term jobs could give way to a gig economy. Short-term, flexible, but precarious. Digital platforms might become the new factories, with individuals as micro-entrepreneurs. Flexibility and autonomy would rise, but so would insecurity and lack of benefits. Universal basic income could decouple survival from work, letting people pursue care, art, or education. The line between work, leisure, and learning could blur, creating a more integrated life. The future of work depends on our choices: a hyper-competitive, isolated market, or a society that frees people for creativity and purpose. The absence of capital forces us to ask, is work just survival or a path to human flourishing? Our answer will shape the hive of the future. A capital crisis would force us to rethink what wealth and success mean. If material accumulation is out of reach for most, its power as a social marker fades. Social capital, relationships, trust, community, could become the new currency. Cultural capital, skills, creativity, knowledge, might define success. National progress could be measured by well-being, health, and sustainability, not just GDP. This shift could move us from consumerism to valuing community and fulfillment. When private capital is blocked, we must ask, what makes a good life? True wealth may lie in our communities, our planet, and our freedom to live meaningfully. Our exploration shows there's no single answer to what happens when capitalism loses its capital. Collapse is possible, as history warns, but so is adaptation and reinvention. The future depends on our choices, toward inequality and precarity, or toward inclusion and resilience. Capitalism is a human creation, shaped by our values and decisions. We can see the pressures building and anticipate dramatic change. The future is unwritten. Whether we face collapse or transformation depends on our collective wisdom and will to build a system that serves all.